Okay, so this lecture is the former Soviet Union. And unlike most other regions of the world, the former Soviet Union is more related to each other. The countries of the former Soviet Union are more related to each other due to history more than location or geography, because this area was all once under control of the Soviet Union, but the Soviet Union actually expanded a little further than the areas we're going to look at. But for the most part, we're just going to call this the former Soviet Union, just for sake of argument. You could call it a couple of different other things, but that's what we're going with. When we think about the former Soviet Union or Russia, other areas around there, we typically think of either really super strong people or kind of goofy, loony people. But there's a lot more to this region than just these people. But I wanted to at least present a common misconception about people from this region. If they have bears riding on unicycles or things like that, that's actually an old urban legend from circus days. And the old circus masters like Barnum and Bailey, they'd be like, "This is a famous Russian bear that we have riding on a unicycle," and so it became a popular myth that that's what they all have there. But it's absolutely not true. Anyway, so as we move into this region, it's a huge region. It's a region that actually spans 12 time zones. That's a big region. That's half the world in coverage, but it's all very far north, which in its geography relates to an issue of finding foodstuffs or being habitable to live in, because a lot of it is very, very, very cold. The physical geography, there are really three or four, maybe five really physical regions here. The Eastern European plain is a continuation of the Northern European plain that runs across parts of France and Germany and Poland, and it continues on into this region. Uh, it's a very rich soil area. It's this area in gray up here that we see. It is also the wettest region because most of the uh, storm systems that come from this way and bring in moist air from here. It's very heavy into farming, and they raise things like gourds, cabbage, some corn. There are lots of crops they grow there, but nothing tropical unless you get much further in the south, in the southern parts of this region. A key term I want you to know is the term Chernozem. Chernozem is this black earth, this ridiculously black, thick soil that is really, really, really rich. It's really good soil for farming in. The typically the idea of the darker the soil, the more humus is in the soil, the better that the soil is. And so, because of that, we have this really rich soil, this Chernozem, that is found in Russia, in Argentina, and also in parts of the Great Plains of the United States. Nebraska, Kansas, they also have Chernozem. Beyond that are the Ural Mountains. The Ural Mountains aren't that significant of a mountain range. They're very low mountains, only 5 or 6,000 feet above sea level at most. But the important two things they do are they are a very straight range. They are very straight in their orientation, north and south. And they also serve as the dividing line between European Russia and Asian Russia. And so on this side of the Ural Mountains, almost 90% of Russians live on this side of the Urals. So that means all of this is only inhabited by 10% of all Russians. That's a very small number of Russian people. The Siberian plain is this green area right here. It's cold and dry, it's sparsely settled, but the Russian companies and the Russian people have discovered there are lots of natural resources, gold and oil and diamonds and coal that are found in this region. The only thing is it's so cold, it's hard to encourage people to say, "Hey, why don't you go and dig for diamonds in this region?" Another issue in this region is permafrost, and that is that the layer of soil directly underneath the grasses that grow there are frozen because it's so cold. And the further north you go, the more the permafrost actually persists throughout the year, as opposed to permafrost that just exists in the winter months from, say, like October until April. But the further north you go, the more likely you will find permafrost in the far northern reaches. This is an example of how bad or how cold the winters get. This is the city of Norilsk, which is in the northern part of Siberia. It is on record as one of the snowiest, if not the snowiest city in the world. As you can see, this right here is a transport truck. This is one of those you have to like climb up a ladder to get into the transport truck. There's another 10 feet of snow above that. So they get a lot of snow in Norilsk. Here is a light pole, a power pole, and there's a guy just standing there. This snow is so cold and packed so deep that he can walk right next to the power line. That's how thick the snow gets. As you move into the far eastern plateau, this area right here, you get even more sparsely settled, and you see a transition of the people, predominantly from a European, more of a white appearance, to more of an Asian appearance. I mean, this girl looks like she would fit in China. That's because the people who live here are related to the people who live down in here more than they are the people that live over here. So we see more of an Asian population, and you see a more autonomous region. They have more autonomy, more freedom to do what they want as they will. It's a region that where you might not find Russian spoken hardly at all in some parts. A region where they have their own belief system, and the Russians are just like, fine, do whatever you want as long as you pay your taxes or owe your allegiance to Russia in general. There's this picture back here, and it's obscured by the map because I did this wrong in PowerPoint, but in the picture, it's a nice little village, as you see. Not a lot of trees because it is so cold throughout the year. But yeah, anyway, into the southeastern steppe. And it's this region down through here. It is very, 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 very dry. Because when you get down here, you don't find a lot of rainfall. So what they have to do is they have to irrigate. They have to build canals and take the snow melt that comes from other parts and use it for farming. So you find a lot of wheat, you find a lot of garlic and onions and other bulbs, things that grow very well in a dry region. Also, we have the Caucasus, which are this mountain range or this region right here. And the mountain range is right there. It's a tectonically active region with lots of earthquakes. There are a lot of different people groups that live through here. And so you get a lot of conflicts between the people groups. And you also have Turkey right in here, Iran down here, Iraq further down. And then up this way is Russia. But this is where you have the people groups of places like South Ossetia and Chechnya. Another concept I want to briefly mention is the idea of continentality. That means how far a place is inside of a continent or distance from an ocean. And the rule is the farther a place is from an ocean, the drier it will be. You compare, say, Nebraska to San Francisco. San Francisco is right on the Pacific Ocean. It gets a lot of rain or a lot of mist. Nebraska, very far from the ocean, very dry. Oceans also regulate temperatures. So as you see, the orange areas are areas that are very dry because the storm systems move across this way. So the further you see, the Urals are creating a nice little line right here. Drier, drier, drier still, but then you get closer to this ocean. You get a little bit of backwash, a little bit of ocean current, creating some precipitation throughout this range, especially on the southern part of the Kamchatka Peninsula. But this also leads to vast temperature changes. In the summer, the southern part can get very warm into the 80s and 90s, but in the winters, sub 50, sub 60 degrees below zero. So that's a really, really cold temperature.